Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Davenport, Dean of Rockefeller Chapel, and it's my honor and joy to welcome you, students and families, to this opening convocation. Class of 2019, this marvelous day has arrived when you take your place as students at the University of Chicago. Today, you join generations of scholars whose unquenchable thirst for knowledge has enriched all life. May your own quest for new understanding, new knowledge, be likewise shaped by a sense of limitless horizon and of the depths of possibility within you, within your own bodies and minds and spirits. Families, as you leave your students here this day, may your care continue to nourish them as they begin this new journey as scholars in this great place of learning, a journey that will set them each on their own life's course to fulfill their promise and destiny. And know that each of us here will do all in our power to help them flourish, to make them wise. And now, with great pleasure, I introduce someone who plays a key role in ensuring student success and well-being, Karen Warren-Coleman, Vice President for Campus Life and Student Services. Karen.
I am absolutely delighted to welcome the class of 2019 and our incoming transfer students to the University of Chicago. I'd also like to welcome and acknowledge the many family members and close friends who are viewing this event from Harper Quad. As new students, you are joining an incredible community of scholars. Today is an important opportunity to celebrate your accomplishments as you join the University of Chicago community, a community steeped in tradition and yet forward-thinking in its ambition and aspirations. It's a community comprised of faculty who are exemplars in their disciplines, committed staff, supportive parents, accomplished alumni, and simply extraordinary students. I could not be more proud to serve as your Vice President for Campus Life and Student Services. It's a privilege to be part of the university and an honor to be part of this rich tradition of excellence. All of us here are part of this vibrant campus culture, and campus and student life works to build a sense of community wherever you might be, whether you're hanging out with friends in your house lounge, eating in the dining halls, playing intramurals, or exploring the city of Chicago. The University of Chicago community will empower you to experience the depth of your intellectual curiosity and the breadth of your humanity. You will learn to ask questions to further your understanding, to build bridges from knowledge gained inside the classroom to experiences outside of it, and it will ready you for academic, personal, and professional success wherever life takes you. Of course, it will be incumbent upon each of you to ask provocative questions as you develop your intellectual, social, political, artistic, and athletic abilities. And I encourage you to get to know your fellow classmates and your faculty members, because there is no doubt in my mind that they will be some of the most interesting people you will ever meet. The university is filled with people who will challenge and inspire you. One of our greatest strengths as a community is the diversity of experiences and perspectives that our students and faculty bring to campus. And as you'll come to learn in the days and years ahead, the university deliberately brings together a variety of viewpoints and supports the free and open exchange of ideas. We are eager for you to join us in these profound and wide-ranging discussions. These conversations, both inside and outside the classroom, will equip you to consider highly complex problems in an ever-changing world, and they will furnish you with the necessary tools to lead purposeful and rewarding lives. Now, before I introduce our next speaker, I want to again offer a very warm welcome to the parents, family, and friends of each of our incoming students who have joined us today. It is because of your support that your student is here today, and the university is delighted to join you and your family on this incredible journey. I know I speak for all of my colleagues at the university when I say that we look forward to partnering with each of you to support the growth of your student. And I hope that today is just the beginning of your own lifelong relationship with the University of Chicago. Now I'd like to introduce our alumni speaker, Greg Marecki. Greg is a 1994 graduate of the college and a 1997 graduate of law school. Greg, thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Greg Marecki, and I have the privilege of serving on the University of Chicago Alumni Board of Governors. I currently serve as its president. As Karen mentioned, I'm a 1994 graduate of the college, and if you do the math, you will determine that I was here sitting in this chapel almost exactly 25 years ago. It was the same chapel, it was just about the same weather, and I imagine I had the same level of excitement that you all have today. I'm not sure what they told you when you applied to the University of Chicago, but what I was told was that I would have a tremendous adventure. I was told that it would be a considerable adventure, and I was very excited for that adventure to begin. And I have to tell you, I was not surprised, and I was not disappointed in the least. I got that considerable adventure. The next 4 years, from 1990 to 1994, were 4 of the best in my life. What I did not realize at the time, and it really surprised me, it still surprises me to this day, is that that considerable adventure continues even today. I went on to get 2 degrees from the University of Chicago. I married a fellow Maroon. She got 2 degrees from the University of Chicago. Most of our best friends are from the University of Chicago. In fact, we had 57 University of Chicago degree holders at our wedding. Thank you. Most of our clients, most of our patients are University of Chicago graduates. Our colleagues are University of Chicago graduates. And University of Chicago graduates, both the folks sitting here today and other alumni, will never cease to amaze you. In fact, I was at a lunch today with one of my classmates who is touted as one of the legal titans in the Chicago legal community. How great is that? The fact is this, that I am part of a growing community of over 350,000 alumni, faculty, students, staff, and parents who will enrich their education every day and who will never cease to amaze you. And today, you join that community. This community cares deeply about your success and the advantages that being a University of Chicago graduate will give you will continue for the rest of your life. So over the next 4 years, I encourage you to engage with not only your classmates, but alumni around the world. And when you graduate, I encourage you to continue engaging with not only your classmates, but other alumni and the University of Chicago. I am confident you will have a considerable adventure in the next 4 years. And so it is my distinct pleasure, on behalf of the University of Chicago Alumni Association, to present to 2 of your classmates in the class of 2019, Isa Alvarez and Brian McGuigan, the official banner of the class of 2019, which you will proudly display at graduation and other fantastic events.
All right, welcome students. You did it. I did tell you it would all work out, and now here you are. Congratulations, and get excited for an incredible 4 years. Come on, give it up here. All right. Now, as your Dean of Admissions, I know I probably should not say this, but you are probably the most impressive and best class I have ever admitted. Don't tell the upperclassmen I said that. This is, it gives me, given your past accomplishments and future aspirations, I am certain you will make incredible contributions to our campus and very soon to the world. And so, President Zimmer, as the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid, I am pleased and very proud this year to formally present to you and Dean Boer and the faculty the class of 2019.
Well, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you, the University of Chicago College class of 2019, and our new transfer students to the University of Chicago. It's likewise a pleasure to welcome those parents of our new students or other family members who are listening to these proceedings today, because you are also joining the University of Chicago community. Now, the University of Chicago is a distinctive institution with a history of remarkable achievement and a particular view of and commitment to education and research. This year we mark the 125th anniversary of the founding of the university, and most of us who have spent many years here believe there's no place that is more exciting, more challenging, or more enriching, and no university that plays a more important role in the history and the landscape of American higher education, or indeed higher education worldwide. I'd like to say a few words about why this is and what this will mean for your experience here as students in the college. And I'd likewise like to say a few words about why we believe that you, who are about to enter the college, are just the right students to be here, and the important role that you will play in this community. The University of Chicago is an institution that has been driven from its inception by an idea that one could create and continuously renew a university that is focused on rigorous, intense inquiry and analysis. This university, through its work every day, expresses the view that clarity derives from the clash of ideas and the willingness to accept answers only when they meet the tests of argument. We believe that the best education and the most empowering education takes place in the environment of constant challenge that is implicit in this culture of rigorous inquiry, and that this culture is responsible for producing ideas of power and importance to humankind. This focus on rigorous inquiry has defined the University of Chicago, its research and education at all levels since its beginning, and it continues to do so today. Now, what does this culture of inquiry really mean? It's useful to illustrate with an example, so as the word inquiry itself implies, let's begin with a question. Namely, what are you doing when you are engaged in discussion? What is the point of argument? Now, if you're like many people, the purpose is to convince the other person that they have it all wrong and that you have it all right. We've all, at one time or another, certainly engaged in such argument. However, for our work at the university, that is not really the point of discussion or argument. That point is rather to take the issue in question and explore arguments from all perspectives. Which arguments are valid, under what circumstances, which stand scrutiny, what are their power and what are their limitations, how they relate, how they comport with various data, and so on. The goal is greater clarity about arguments from all perspectives on the issue. Embedded in this approach is the understanding that most often all arguments do not point in the same direction, and a given argument's power and limitations must be understood simultaneously. Problems are complex. There are systemic interactions. Single actions have both benefits and undesirable consequences. Seemingly simple assertions can have complex implications. Arguments apply with more power in some circumstances and are more limited in others. New data can always emerge and must be sought. The more one argues and discusses, the more data are brought to bear, related questions raised and analyzed, and perspectives are incorporated into the analysis, then the fabric of understanding becomes richer and the approach to the problem becomes more nuanced. In our culture of inquiry, understanding becomes complex, expandable, and fluid rather than simple and rigid. I want to emphasize that this approach is not at all equivalent to saying that all arguments have merit. In fact, quite the contrary. This approach asserts that all arguments, no matter how comfortable they may be to you, require scrutiny, and quite explicitly recognizes the difficulty of establishing merit in arguments. Another feature of the intellectual environment at Chicago is that problems are taken on their own terms. By this I mean that many problems do not present themselves neatly along the lines of traditional and important academic disciplines. This is not to devalue the disciplines. On the contrary, disciplines provide important, developed modes of inquiry that have great explanatory power. However, they also have limitations. And for many important questions, one must understand and bring to bear the depth of perspective of several disciplines. This intellectual porosity and multidisciplinary engagement are other key aspects of the University of Chicago, aspects that emanate directly from the integrity of our approach to inquiry. Intellectual porosity also has a significant impact on what it feels like to be a member of the University of Chicago community. As a mathematics faculty member here for many years, I was always aware of being part of a larger institution with a commitment to rigorous inquiry and a corresponding sense of its own mission. The University of Chicago never feels like an intellectual holding company for disparate disciplines. It has a sense of wholeness and unity of purpose that is very distinctive. The core curriculum, a source of innovation in higher education whose value continues to resonate, is one realization of this unity of purpose. And I'm confident that you'll come to share this sense of the university. Now, as students here, in order for you to most benefit from and best contribute to this environment, you are going to develop the skills and the approach of holding competing perspectives in your mind simultaneously, listening to arguments of others, and both understanding and challenging them. At the same time, you must challenge your own assumptions, and this is often the hardest part, while ultimately still forging your own synthesis. It is a level of thought and analysis that leaves the simple who is right and who is wrong far behind. And in the same vein, you will not find in Chicago an environment of easy and comfortable belief in the latest politically correct view of the world. What you will discover is a community that finds intense and rigorous engagement tremendously exciting, enjoyable, challenging, empowering, and gratifying, and with a great sense of community and commonality around this distinctive and sometimes exhilarating experience. Entering this community and meeting so many new people and engaging new challenges as you are is exciting, but sometimes it can also be a bit intimidating. You're going to find yourself needing to take some risks, engaging in conversation and debate, and being open-minded to what others are saying. You'll learn a great deal from your early engagements, from your fellow students, from the faculty, and you will likewise contribute a great deal. It may not come together immediately or easily, but this exploration and experimentation will be part of your learning process, and you will soon find your footing and discover that, in fact, you can do this very well. I want to return to one word that I just used, namely empowering, and briefly address another question. Why exactly is education at the University of Chicago environment so empowering, as so many of our students, ultimately turned alumni, have found for generations? And to answer this, it's useful to look at the difference between action and analysis. So action has an either-or quality to it. Taking action can lead to intended benefits and a desired end, but sometimes to undesirable consequences as well. What would be the best approach to taking such action? With the simple and comfortable belief that one is right and all is for the best, or with the habit of mind to realize that in many cases, all the arguments for a particular action are not on one side, and that one can understand and anticipate the full context and consequences of an act, the downside as well as the upside. What the analytic culture of inquiry at Chicago provides is a lifelong set of skills and approach to the world that eschews simplicity and comfort in favor of analysis, inquiry, and recognition of complexity. It empowers appropriate action because it strives to understand its full implications. In fostering the habit of questioning, it simultaneously fosters imagination and creativity of action. It is this approach that has empowered so many of our students over the university's 125 years and provided the environment for our faculty research. It is what has empowered our faculty and alumni to challenge conventional wisdom, define new disciplines, make imaginative and creative contributions to every form of human endeavor, assume leadership positions throughout the world, and in fact, change the world. And it will do this for you as well. Diversity has a very particular role at the University of Chicago now and in the university's history. The nature of questions being asked and perspectives being expressed are often a function of the experiences and outlooks of those participating. Diversity for the university is therefore particularly germane to our core mission and identity. We must ensure that our scholarly and education community is comprised of a rich mix of individuals who, through their own distinctive viewpoints, contribute to the intellectually challenging culture of inquiry of the university. Our history reflects this openness. The university has, unlike many of our peer institutions, always been open to women as well as men. The first doctorate earned by a black woman in the United States was awarded in 1921 at the University of Chicago. We were among the first major non-historically black universities to tenure a black faculty member. Contributions by Asian American scholars in the 1920s were essential to the university's landmark research in sociology. At a time when other elite institutions systematically discriminated against Jews, the University of Chicago refused to set quotas. We've long been a magnet for students from Mexico and from South America. Our Odyssey and No Barriers programs and other financial aid programs are designed to ensure that we remain accessible and attractive to outstanding and talented students from low and moderate income families, and that these students have the capacity to take full advantage of their time at the University of Chicago. Throughout its 125-year history, the university has acted on the belief that the capacity to contribute was not limited to some specific groups, and very importantly, in addition, that the richness of the community directly contributed to the richness of the intellectual environment. The university that you enter has been built by many persons over more than a century. Every generation and thousands of individuals have made contributions to its strength, culture, achievements, and vitality. Each of us at the university today, faculty, students, administrators, and staff, are the beneficiaries of those who came before us, who gave to the university through their work, their commitment, their financial contributions, and their advocacy. It is this legacy that we all inherit together, and it is this legacy on which we all build together. You will contribute to this legacy through your own work here in the next 4 years in the college, and through your continued engagement with the university after you graduate. You are becoming a part, starting today, of the continuum of the history of this institution. A key part of this history is the singular role that the university has had in maintaining open inquiry, supporting free expression, and the importance of ensuring those in our community are free to express and to hear ideas, even if others find them uncomfortable or even objectionable. As part of the University of Chicago, it will be your responsibility to take part in and to preserve this culture of openness and free expression. I focused a great deal on the culture of inquiry at the university because this is, to my mind, the defining feature of this university and the educational experience of all its students. But it is not the only feature. Your analytic work will not exist in a vacuum, nor does the university exist in a vacuum. The university presents a myriad of opportunities to situate your work in a larger set of activities and to pursue your various interests. Likewise, we are fortunate to live in an extraordinary city with enormous opportunities, and we are residents of the South Side of Chicago, a community of which the university is a committed citizen and proud member. All of the opportunities presented on campus and in the city can contribute and dramatically enrich the nature of your total experience at the university. So this is something about the university. Now, what about you, our students entering the college this fall? You've come from all over the world with a wide variety of backgrounds, interests, and ambitions. But most importantly, you have convinced us that you are exactly the right students who can most contribute to and benefit from the culture that I've described. You've convinced us by the work that you've done, the presentation you've made of your abilities, interests, and outlook, the recommendations of those who know you well, and your demonstrated commitment that you will be wonderful and full members of the University of Chicago community and all that that entails. It is for all these reasons that the University of Chicago and all that it represents has chosen to invest in you. The university community that you join is comprised of your fellow students in the college and beyond, the university's faculty, administrators, and staff, our trustees, alumni, and committed friends, our students and alumni parents, and those who have been here before as faculty and administrators. And soon enough, it will include those who will come after you. It is a community of enormous energy, excitement, challenge, and enjoyment in ongoing mutual learning. While you are, of course, focused on the next 4 years, you're entering a community that you will be part of for many, many years to come. Before closing, I do want to say a few words to the parents who are listening to these proceedings. Having been through this myself personally 3 times, I know that sending one's children off to college is not a simple act. It is exciting, although a bit anxiety-provoking. It is an act of significant financial commitment. It is also an act of trust. Trust in your children, that they will take advantage of the extraordinary opportunities that college affords them. Trust in yourselves, that you have done your job to this point as parents and can watch and hopefully enjoy your children's growth in the next phase of their lives. And of course, trust in the institution that they attend. You are entrusting us at the University of Chicago with the education of your children, now our students. I know that for most of you, there is nothing more important, and likewise for us at the University of Chicago. There is nothing that is more important. So to new students and parents alike, welcome to the University of Chicago. It is for all the reasons that I've described, a university like no other, where you will have an education like no other. You're now part of this extraordinary and distinctive community with its remarkable legacy and remarkable future. This will be a great adventure. Enjoy it. Thank you.
My name is John Boer, and I have the honor to speak to you today as the Dean of your college and as a professor in the Department of History. And I'd like to talk with you for a few minutes about the college and about the university to which you've come to live. This year, as my colleague Bob Zimmer mentioned, we're celebrating the 125th anniversary of the founding of the university in 1890. Shaler Matthews, an early faculty member in the Divinity School, tells the story in his autobiography of arriving at the university in 1894 when most of what is now the campus was still what he called an unredeemed prairie. The place was disorganized, and many of our most magnificent buildings were unfinished or not yet built. But Matthews recalled that none of that really mattered, that as he put it, the air was charged with enthusiasm and with hope. And opening day is a time of hope. It's a time of enthusiasm, it's a time of pride, and on such days as this one really does understand the power and the opportunities of these extraordinary communities that we call universities. I can imagine that many of you in the audience today are a bit anxious both about the place to which you've come and about your fate here over the next 4 years. About the second issue, your personal futures, I want to reassure you immediately, you would not be here today if we were not confident that you will be extremely successful in the college. And of course, some of us need to worry, some more than others perhaps. Give yourself a little bit of an edge to work at 120%. And if you're that kind of personality, then you should continue to worry and fret and so forth. But in fact, you really should relax. Enjoy these coming days and rest assured that you're in the right place at the right time and, as the saying goes, with the right stuff. At the same time, I would be remiss if I did not add to these encouraging words a qualification. Cardinal Newman, who was a great 19th century English educator and churchman, once had occasion to give a talk to the entering students of the new Catholic University in Dublin in 1858. And he spoke at an orientation meeting very much like this one. And Newman urged his students at that meeting to understand that the basic purpose of a university education was to open new intellectual horizons and to nurture new conceptual habits and skills, not to prepare themselves for a specific job the week after college. He wanted his students to remember that, as he put it, it is not the place that makes the man, but the man that makes the place. Now, aside from the gendered nature of the words that he chose, Newman's point was, I think, exceedingly useful. For what is most important in the next 4 years is that you learn the skills of a scholar and the discipline of research, how to cultivate and to value knowledge for its own sake, how to fashion intelligent questions and compelling arguments, and how to form sound opinions based upon those arguments, how to defend yourself persuasively, your own opinions, while faithfully seeking to understand the opinions of others. You must prepare yourselves to make the place and not have the place make you. In a word, to make yourselves the kind of women and men who will lead American society and societies of other nations in the century ahead of us. Now, as to the kind of place you're coming to join, this is a bit more complicated question. In joining this particular community, you become a member of one of the world's great universities, not only because of the scholarly ancestors whom you can now claim, or because of the distinguished women and men who will teach you, but because you yourselves will add to the great reservoir of knowledge and talent, interest and commitment that is at the core of any serious university. Universities are among the oldest institutions of our culture and our civilization. They date from the 12th century in Europe, where students and teachers gathered in what were called cathedral schools to pursue common interest in learning. Over the course of the centuries, the universities in Europe and America and elsewhere in the world have been sources of great social and cultural continuity, but also radical intellectual and scientific change. Any great university is an amalgam of many streams of aspirations and hopes, sustained by many generations of members of its community. And wondrously, this process of aspiration and hope is genuinely democratic, for no one owns the university. Rather, it owns all of us. Chicago is a terribly proud and a terribly ambitious place. It's also an institution that has developed over the decades certain special ways of talking and thinking about its identity, what I would call rhetorical folkways that in turn have helped us create a vibrant, living memory of our community, even if the complex historical residues on which such memories are based are often only partially understood. Let me give you two examples. The first involves the impulse of the university to see itself as having a universal mission that is almost timeless in its verity, standing apart from the messiness of any particular time or place in our civilization. One sees this impulse in our selection of our symbols and our sayings. We are a university that is deeply fond of symbols, even if those symbols were often strangely constructed and often challenged. The motto of our university, Crescat Scientia Vita Excolator, let knowledge grow from more to more and so be human life enriched, is a hybrid-like adaptation created by a clever faculty members grafting together of selected lines from Tennyson's poem In Memoriam and a few lines from Virgil's Aeneid. Over the years, generations of students and faculty have found this rhetorical offspring of Virgil and Tennyson reassuring in its mix of Roman civic virtue and Gilded Age American enthusiasm, not only because it connoted the purpose of the university as the engendering of pure learning, but also because in its dignity and simple logic, it clothed the university with a seemingly universal mission that was beyond the messiness of the civilization, the urban civilization in which we were founded. This artificial combination of the Roman and the Victorian was, however, disagreeable to one of our most prominent presidents, Robert Maynard Hutchins, the son of a learned and pious Presbyterian minister and a young Yale Law School dean who became president of the University of Chicago in 1929 at the age of 30. Hutchins is perhaps best known as the president who supported the work of the then dean of the college, Chauncey Boucher, and a group of other Chicago professors in creating Chicago's plan for general education, nowadays we call it the CORE, in the early 1930s, an educational program that revolutionized higher education in the United States. But Hutchins also ought to be known as the man, the rather iconoclastic man, who proposed in 1944 that we were sorely in need of a new motto. Here is what he said, quote, "I must confess that I've never liked the motto of the University of Chicago, Crescat Scientia Vita Excolator, let knowledge grow, that life may let knowledge grow, life be enriched. In the first place, Hutchins said, it seems incongruous and affected for those rugged and unsophisticated pioneers of the 1890s to think up a Latin slogan for their raw new university. In the second place, enriched is ambiguous. I do not like, Hutchins continued, the materialistic interpretation to which it's open. Therefore, I suggest a new motto for the University of Chicago, one which will express its spirit and its purpose as it sallies forth to battle in the revolution that must come if men are to live together in peace. The new motto I suggest for the university is a line from Walt Whitman. It is this, solitary, singing in the West, I strike up for a new world. Now for Hutchins, Walt Whitman spoke in defense of a different kind of greatness, the uniquely American adventure of creating, through education, a new and better moral world for ourselves and for our posterity. And for Hutchins, the university's mission was not simply a universal and timeless search for abstract truth, but rather that truth should have a powerful moral impact on the society of his time. A second example of the collision between memory and identity involves stories that presume we were created effortlessly, heroically, and with the force of a brilliant and benevolent providence behind us. This idea is reflected in the simple but elegant statement found in many official publications of the university that states, quote, we were founded by John D. Rockefeller, end quote, as if the university was somehow hatched out of a large philanthropic egg bestowed by Mr. Rockefeller in 1890. The university did profit enormously from the generous philanthropy of John D. Rockefeller to the tune of $35 million between 1892 and 1910, which in today's dollars would be about, depending upon currency calculations, between $500 million and $750 million in 2015 currency. And this magnificent chapel, named in honor of Mr. Rockefeller and built with his money, not only provides functional spaces to celebrate religious ceremonies of many denominational kinds, but it's also a kind of speaking architecture, hallowing the massive wealth and the massive self-confidence that seemed to make the university's, the founding of the university a simple, secure, and almost holy act, one that had to happen to a wise and to a good people. But in fact, the origins of the university are more complex, more dispersed, and anchored deeper in a history of courageous risk-taking in the face of adversity and ambivalence. And I want to take a few minutes this afternoon to tell you this particular story, since it is a plausible way to reflect on the elements that have given the university its greatness, and it also, I think, bears on the kind of education that you can give to yourself over the next 4 years. The University of Chicago did not, in fact, begin as Rockefeller's university. It began, rather, as Douglas's university, that is, the Stephen A. Douglas of the Lincoln-Douglas debates. And you will remember, if you remember your high school American history, that these debates took place in Illinois in 1858, involving searching conversations between Douglas and Lincoln about freedom and slavery, and ultimately about the conditions under which our Union might survive. None of the debates occurred in Chicago, which at that time had about 30,000 citizens, which was already the largest municipality in Illinois. But one of the two debaters, Stephen A. Douglas, was actually a prominent citizen of Chicago, and in fact, he owned a considerable estate called Oakenwald on the south side of the city. And Stephen A. Douglas's tomb at 35th Street in the Lake, nowadays an impressive public memorial maintained by the state of Illinois, is the last remaining vestige of Oakenwald. Now, as far as we know, Abraham Lincoln was a self-taught, self-schooled man, and he had many virtues, but it never occurred to Abraham Lincoln to create a college or a university. Surprisingly, just that did occur to Stephen A. Douglas, whose dedication to the westward expansion of the nation was considerable, and who was a strong advocate of the commercial and cultural development of this fledgling city of Chicago. As an unabashed booster of the early city, Douglas's awareness about the importance of higher education in the growing West led him to want to create a college. And thus, in 1856, Douglas proceeded to offer a group of local Chicago Baptists, members of a Baptist denomination, 10 acres of land located on 34th Street between Cottage Grove and Rhodes Avenue. And today, all the remains of this is the parking lot of a Jewel food store. I encourage you at some point in your 4 years to go down and look at this famous parking lot. Now, Douglas's university had as its mission to be a decidedly Christian but not sectarian university under the stewardship of the Baptist Church. On the day-to-day level, this idea translated into a university devoted to the customary studies of the 19th century undergraduate college, classics and grammar foremost, a more modern course devoted to science for a few, and even an agricultural school whose aim was to apply science to agriculture. Douglas's University of Chicago was thus built on the model of a frontier town, church-sponsored college of the 19th century American West, with a special interest in practical science and agriculture added for good measure. And yet, within 3 decades, the auspicious promise of this University of Chicago had failed miserably. The old University of Chicago, that is to say the first one, had in fact 2 rival identities, and they came more and more into conflict. One as a Baptist denominational school, the other as a general agent of civic progress for the city, aiding Chicago in its general cultural development. As a missionary church, the Baptists in Chicago were really at home on the margins of society where conversion was crucial. They were not a wealthy sect, but they lived within an increasingly wealthy metropolis, and by 1900, Chicago was the 6th largest city in the world, a city where new cultural structures and new understandings of American history were quickly built and deposited. And in spite of the efforts to persuade wealthy men, the wealthy elites of Chicago, to give contributions to the early university, the university, in fact, was bereft of any significant support at all. And their alternative was to rely on their own clergy to undertake fundraising, but this was in turn a mixed blessing, given that the ministers were complex personalities with budgetary claims from their own congregations, who required a great deal of hand-holding and could easily go off the rail and cause harm to the broader institutional priorities of the institution. The forlorn image of the university as both debt-ridden and badly managed was hardly likely to inspire substantial philanthropy, and certainly not the kind of investments that would transform it into an institution worthy of an emerging industrial metropolis. Unable to pay its bills, the operations of the First University of Chicago were suspended in 1886. It basically went bankrupt, much to the embarrassment of the local Baptist community and indeed to Baptists across the United States. Now, among the many reasons for its failure, one important explanation lies in the fact that the First University of Chicago's educational mission and its cultural foundations were less than the hugely expanding metropolis of Chicago deserved and merited. In a word, it failed because in its simple modesty it lacked strong, visionary leaders who could mobilize sentiment on behalf of a more ambitious and integrated conception of higher education, one that went beyond the pieties and the practical vocationalism of a mid-19th century college. Such a leader of that kind of an enterprise was to take his place on the scene in the later 1880s in the person of William Rainey Harper. Harper was a prodigiously ambitious and energetic academic entrepreneur. He was born in rural Ohio in 1856. He received a PhD in ancient languages from Yale University when he was only 19 years old. Harper, too, was a Baptist, and he had close connections to Chicago, having been appointed in 1879 as a professor of Hebrew in a local seminary. They called the Morgan Park Seminary on the far south side. Harper eventually returned to Yale as a professor. He became a professor of Semitic languages in 1886, but his friends here in Chicago never forgot about him. The collapse of the old university generated immense shame on the part of local Baptist leaders, immense shame. And they immediately launched an appeal for a new and more solid enterprise, and William Rainey Harper was the man they thought capable of giving the new foundation the leadership that would secure its future. It would take another 3 years of intense appeals to John D. Rockefeller, but in the end, Harper agreed to become president of a new University of Chicago when Rockefeller promised a cornerstone gift of $600,000, and Rockefeller promised that gift while emphatically hoping that Harper would become president. The process was lumpy, politically uncertain, and by no means fated to succeed. Rockefeller himself had grave doubts about the ability of the Baptists to use the second chance that they coveted, to use it well. The general consensus among the civic elites in Chicago in the late 1880s is that these kindly people had bungled the management of the First University. Why pour more money? Why pour more money into the swamp of parochialism and what was viewed as intellectual short-sightedness? And yet the new university was founded, it got going in 1890. It officially opened its doors in the fall of 1892, having secured permission from the now defunct Board of Trustees of the old university to use their official name. And to convince the civic elites of Chicago, and more importantly, the academic elites of the nation, that the new university would differ profoundly from the old, Harper needed a new plan, a new plan. The plan had a logic and, in a kind of Hegelian sense, a Geist that was profoundly different from that of a denominational college. Harper conceived of a non-sectarian research university that would include an undergraduate college open to both men and women, a preparatory school for that college, an extension division for adult education, a university press publishing both scholarly books and learned journals, professional schools, and a graduate school modeled on the great research universities of Europe. And he staffed it with a faculty of 120 eminent scholars, many of whom had studied at various European and especially German universities. In ruthless contrast to the practices of the old university, Harper treated his faculty as agents of professional prestige, whose individual and collective research attainments sanctioned by the competitive and meritocratic standards of a new national scholarly community filled with journals and international conferences and professional organizations would define the very essence of what the new university was. Harper believed in relentless competition based on merit, both for faculty and for students, even if weaker souls found this discomforting. And research became the new coin of the realm and was seen as salutary not only as a way of advancing knowledge, but as a way of demonstrating the imagination, the creativity, and the professionalism of the new faculty, and of mobilizing and legitimating the expertise of the new university to improve the civic world of the metropolis. In stark contrast to the parochialism of the first university, Harper also draped his new institution in a more capacious understanding of its responsibilities to the city. Erudition and social improvement would combine to enhance the impact of science, but also to elevate the quality of Chicago's public culture well beyond that which existed. And with this new model, the university attracted powerful local support, including generous donations from members of other Protestant denominations, as well as an extraordinary donation by a group of prominent Jewish businessmen. Altogether, these were a remarkable group of Chicagoans, men and women who represented the new social and industrial elites of the late 19th century metropolis, and who believed that Chicago deserved a distinguished university that would rise above the boundaries of narrow sectarianism. And the university now became what the city had already become. If the city of Chicago had remained like Galesburg, Illinois, or Gambier, Ohio, Douglas's University of Chicago might not have failed, and today's University of Chicago would be like Kenyon or Knox College. Good colleges, good small institutions with their roots in a pioneer Protestant and denominational past, begun as church foundations at about the same time as the founding of the town. But in its second founding, the University of Chicago was very different. To match the city's growing economic, social, and political reach, the collegiate ideal appropriate to a small-town college was overtaken by the larger scale and more explicitly worldly enterprise of a research university. Now, as I've said, this whole project was filled with enormous risk, but the resultant university was not only new, but it was flexible and capable of adaptation, and it charted in the first decades of its history several different avenues of intellectual purpose. It combined at one and the same time a deep commitment to merit and to self-achievement. It was a place where one could reinvent oneself many times, and where the allure of crowd values, the kinds of values which John Stuart Mill in his tract on liberty so feared, where these values had little sway. It was an institution that had a zealous conviction in the worthiness of learning and the edification of wisdom, but it also blended those convictions with a very pragmatic attitude toward the professions and toward an engagement with the city. And when we describe the university, our university, as an ideal university, we're referring to its commitment to the logic and the purpose of what a true university should be. A university is not a trade school, it's not an NGO, it's not a prison, it's not a kindergarten, it's not an ideological advocacy group, and it is certainly not a shopping mall. It seeks not to shelter its members from hard and discomforting facts, but to enable them to attain disciplined self-enlightenment. Nowadays, all great universities claim such norms, at least they try to claim them, but our success in embracing, enhancing, and sustaining these norms is deeply rooted in our own history, a history filled with early failure that led the founders of our institution to be willing to take great risks in the name of creating something very different from what had gone before. The new university was particularly dedicated to the idea of academic freedom at a time when this idea was actually very foreign to most in American society. The right to stare, the need to stare new and uncomfortable realities in the face came not because such notions were pleasing and attractive, but because they were fundamental to the pursuit of basic research. It would have been impossible for Harper to launch the second University of Chicago without giving the faculty, and I will say also the students, the political and moral space to speak their own minds and to fulfill their own scholarly ambitions. Now, as students, you will profit enormously from the intellectual excitement, from the willing devotion to scholarly research, and the learning and seriousness of purpose that has marked and shaped our university from its very beginning. Although our core curriculum, that which most of you will be involved in this coming year, comes a little later in our history. The core really comes from the 1930s during the Hutchins administration. The core would have been impossible for the faculty to create without the prior creation of a campus academic culture that took undergraduate learning so seriously, and the assemblage of a student body who were willing and who understood that they too were expected to take learning seriously. Many worry today about the fate of the liberal arts, but such fears are misplaced at a university like Chicago that is not only resolutely devoted to research and teaching in the humanities, but is a university who has students like yourselves who believe in that mission as well. You will also profit from the fact that the university was founded in a time and a place that took very seriously the need for its members to have an impact in the world. The first University of Chicago failed because of its lack of contact with the massive, the surging, the dynamic urban civilization of Chicago. The civic donors who helped Harper and Rockefeller launch the new university expected that the students would use their educations to have a discernible impact on the city's commercial institutions, on its free professions, and on schools. Hence the college's recent development of many new career advisory programs, including massive numbers of Metcalf internships and research opportunities, is actually a continuation of long-standing traditions that do not see the liberal arts and the professions as hostile or mutually exclusive forces. Our new career initiatives run quite ably by my colleagues in career advancement, and our cooperative programs with our distinguished professional schools, while relatively unique in American higher education today, are in fact latter-day descendants of Harper's early schemes to integrate the work of the university and its multiple units into a larger organic whole and to prepare our students to cultivate and to lead a higher civic life. As an ensemble, the logic of Harper's educational plan, that which gave birth to our university, was nothing less than breathtaking, because the new university was to be created all at once in a fully unified format, the parts of which would relate and reinforce each other. Harper was particularly pleased with the quality of the college students whom the new university attracted, and he later wrote, quote, "In ability to organize work, in skill of adaptation of means to end, in determination of purpose to win, in readiness to make sacrifice for the sake of intellectual advancement. No body of students ever gathered together in this country or in any other country has shown itself superior to the student body of the University of Chicago." You are the direct descendants of those students in talent and ambition, and it is important that you dedicate yourselves to protecting the unique culture of this place. This is your university as well as ours. This is your university as well as ours. And you will have an immense personal stake now and over the course of your adult lives in sustaining its many virtues. Not in the least because they are virtues that will help each of you become more enlightened and more constructive leaders of our society. What is most characteristic of the University of Chicago, perhaps more so than any other private American research university, is that the academic culture of our undergraduate students and the academic culture of our faculty substantially overlap. This is a rare and a special circumstance, a rare and special privilege, one that is the envy of colleagues at many other universities. Finally, a word of congratulations to the parents who have joined us today in the Harper Quadrangles. Uwe Oma, who is a wonderful German photographer and the author of the family album of the planet Earth, recently observed about his encounters with 1,000 contemporary families and doing a photographic exhibit. These were families drawn from all over the world. He said that, quote, "I learned there's one thing that every family in the world wants, the hope of parents to be able to give their children a better education than they had for themselves." Realistically, of course, none of us can give our children an education. Only you can give yourself an education. But you have, the parents have made it possible for you to give yourselves the very best possible education. And for that, I think we owe them an enormous debt and great congratulations. The process of going to college is complicated for all parents. We do our best to advise our high school seniors about the selection of colleges, and then we live through these tension-filled months waiting for the famous thick envelopes, or I guess nowadays is a thick email that Jim Nondorf sends out to a select few. We parents then travel long distances to say goodbye to children whom we've known and nurtured and loved with great passion for almost 2 decades. On such an occasion, we're bound to be filled with enormous pride and yet a melancholy about the passing of generations and of time itself. You, our parents, should be extremely pleased with the success of your daughters and your sons. That they are here today, sitting in this great chapel, is their doing, for it was they who used their talents in ways that merited them the opportunity, indeed I would argue the privilege, to become full and permanent members of one of the world's great universities. Our students will certainly flourish in the college, and I have no doubt that 3 years from now, plus 9 months, we'll see all of you back in the quadrangles, full of admiration for your daughters and your sons' accomplishments, full of pride in their energy, their success, and having even greater love, if such is possible, for their compassion, for their generosity, and for their humanity. But they would not be here today without your help, without your encouragement, without your financial sacrifices, and above all, without your love. And so as the dorm rooms are put in order and as the time comes to say goodbye, but of course only until family weekend in late October, I'm sure that I speak for all of our students, as I also speak for myself and for my faculty colleagues, in telling you that we are enormously grateful for your conviction that higher education does matter and that it is extremely valuable to the lives of our children and perhaps even more importantly, valuable to the life of our nation. Now it is our venerable custom that we must divide. After the Motet choir sings the alma mater, I'm going to ask the students of the class of 2019 and the transfer students of 2015 to proceed to your class photograph, after which you will have a wonderful dinner in your residence halls with your fellow class members. And it gives me a very special pleasure to invite the parents and other relatives and friends of the class of 2019 to join President Zimmer and other members of college alumni, faculty, and the administration for reception in Hutchinson Commons. Again, let me welcome you to this great and magnificent community, and I wish you all a safe and stimulating year. Thank you.